Daniel J. Cohen, president of Indivisible Houston. How are you doing this morning, my brother?
Doing great. I'm here with you on the show. I'm hearing the new Pledge of Allegiance for the first time. So it's a magical Monday morning, bright and early.
It's
Let's do this
it's a magical. Well, look, you have Jack driving in, an hour from near Galveston coming into here. He always have great words. He has a lot of time to think on that drive, man. So we're just happy to have brother Jack in the house with all his good wisdom as well. But anyway, let's first start here. Organically, people have been really talking about the issue of our district attorney and the values that she seemed to not have represented appropriately for the county she has served. That's my start. Why don't you tell me a little bit of background and then what occurred over the last 2 weeks?
Boy, a little bit of background. All right, I'll keep it as summarized as I can. So pretty much since around 2018, 2019, which is a couple years after the district attorney entered office, she has been butting heads with different organizations. So when I say that, I'll just run it down quickly. Precinct chairs, precinct captains, activists, every criminal justice organization in the county that's adjacent to Democratic Party values, LGBT political caucus, immigrants' rights organizations, pretty much you name it, and she's butted heads with them. And it's not just the people who are in grassroots. It's not just the nonprofits and C3s and C4s, but it's also the elected officials out there who are the major leaders of the Democratic Party. So this is a long time coming. As good as any organizer is, we're not magicians. You can't suddenly get everybody mad at someone or something like that and manufacture a process. It has to be organic to some degree, and this has absolutely been organic. What's happened over the last few weeks is, well, let's go back a little further, right? Late September, a story dropped in the Chronicle that detailed specifically the way that the district attorney weaponizes her office, goes far beyond what the law requires whenever it benefits her politically.
Let me stop you right there. I need to stop you right there because all our audience are not as politically savvy as you are. So explain what weaponization of an office means.
So basically, it's when people who disagree with you, when you have an opportunity to launch charges against people who disagree with you, you not only launch those charges, but you go further than the law requires, and you prosecute them harder than you would people who agree with you. And I can give very clear details of two up and down cases. So the district attorney claims to support misdemeanor cash bail reform. She absolutely does not. Whenever people say misdemeanor cash bail reform in this county, what they are talking about is the O'Donnell settlement. The University of Pennsylvania has released a study saying that the O'Donnell settlement has been extremely effective at reducing recidivism, reducing the amount of jail time people have, reducing cost to the taxpayer with no impact on public safety. If any impact, it's actually slightly positive, but there's no significant impact statistically speaking.
So what you're saying is that, when it comes to bail, just locking people up without bail, as opposed to letting them out on their recognizance if they're not violent offenders, it turns out that what we've been hearing on TV by the news media, trying to get us fearful about these judges letting people out without bail, it has negative the negative consequences that they're speaking about isn't really so. In fact, if you let out somebody that hasn't been tried yet, that isn't violent, they can still go to work. They can still take care of their families. They can still do all these things while they wait. What happens a lot of times, Daniel, is people just talk about the bond issue, but they don't talk about what happens to real people as they interface with the criminal justice system. I just wanted to clarify that a bit. Please continue, sir.
No, you're absolutely right. It's worse look, misdemeanor cash bail reform, the O'Donnell settlement is good for public safety. It's good for taxpayer dollars. And it keeps people safer. The DA's reports have scapegoated this system, this position. They've been shredded by actual attorneys. They've been shredded by former prosecutors from her office in droves, and they've been shredded by editorial boards, major editorial boards, including the Chronicle editorial board. It's all a lie. She's completely fabricated it. Only the DA and the Houston Police Officers Union agree on that issue, and that's why it's such a key sticking issue, because That's the thing that's where she has to defend her turf and play to the Crime Stoppers crowd. And even Crime Stoppers, by the way, has said misdemeanor cash bail reform is a positive development. Now they speak in a very gray way about some of the details of it, but they have admitted as much. So that is the key issue upon which there's disagreement. Now here's where the weaponization comes in. Yes, go
Before
ahead.
you go with the weaponization, I want to clarify something for our audience as well. Many times people ask, why would she be doing that? Why would she and, let's say, the media and others be trying to tell you how bad it is to let people out on your recognizance, and somehow they become killers when they go out? It's because there is an industry that depends on pilfering people in jail so that they make a profit on human beings. It's a form of, I call it another form of not so antiseptic slavery. But continue, please, my friend.
You're absolutely right. The bail bond industry is something you can do a whole show on. These folks are extremely dirty. They put payment plans together, so they need to raise 10% of bond to be able to put things out, but they'll often front their own clients the 10% to begin with. So the whole thing is a racket. It's all dirty to begin with. Michael Kubosh is tied into the bail industry here in local Harris County politics, sat on the city council. One of the biggest bail bond insurers in the whole country is right here in Harris County. One of the top 10 in the entire world is right here in Harris County. And a lot of times, just as they do in other corporations, just as they do in the rest of big insurance, they're able to slide away if somebody doesn't pay off their bond. They know how to stack the deck. They know how to make sure to hedge their bets. And these are the people, in fact, some of these folks have been giving money to the district attorney and to other politicians. So that's it. There is a money trail. I'm glad that you brought that up. Let's talk about the double standard, though, because I think that this is really important. So let's pick two cases so that we can put them side by side. Commissioner Rodney Ellis, the district attorney, takes him to the grand jury over allegedly misusing funds when it came to an African art exhibit. This is a juicy story for any of the racists out there because they get to point at it and say that a local Black elected official is misusing funds related to African art, right? So this is something that they can weaponize very easily in the press. All the details leaked to the press. So that's a very clear sign that she was going pretty hard after the commissioner. And in fact, in many cases, she will leak these details to the press. That's a very clear sign of weaponization. Now, once the verdict came down from the grand jury, it was a no bill. Now, no bill means we didn't find anything. We don't need to indict anyone. That's the end of the ball game, et cetera. Even if someone is billed and indicted, it doesn't mean that they're guilty, to be clear. Mm-hmm. But in this case, it does mean if there's no bill, it means that there's no reason to even see whether or not they're guilty or innocent. Usually, the district attorney, when issuing a no bill, puts a one-sentence statement out that says, that's it, ball game's over, we're going to keep moving on. If you look at the two no bills of the officers who murdered Jalen Randall, then you will find that the statement is very clear that, we presented the evidence, nothing happened, and we're moving on. There was no belly aching. There was no outrage at the injustice of the system. She just put a very clear no bill together.
I need to stop you right there because you just conflated two things. You brought up the incident with Jalen. Let's finish with Rodney Ellis first. Sure. And say Rodney Ellis went ahead and after Rodney Ellis was no bill, what occurred?
Well, and let me just say briefly, the reason I did that is to demonstrate that usually a no bill, even in an outrageous situation, in an unjust situation, is just a small statement from the DA. But in the case of Rodney Ellis's no bill, she made sure to put a 2-page letter out that alleged civil penalties and sent it in an open letter form to the county attorney of Harris County, Christian Menifee, which is highly irregular. In fact, if you talk to lawyers out there, you don't see a DA ever doing this. This is just it's a unique situation. And she made sure to put that letter out. And the only reason that you do that is because it's politically effective to do it. So that's a situation where she leaked the details to the media. She responded in a regular way to the grand jury no bill, and did something that's completely unheard of. Now, let me show you another case. There was a constable here in Harris County, and there were women who worked for the constable, female deputies, who alleged that he placed them in, and I quote, bachelor party style stings, and that they were exploited in those situations. And these women brought civil suit against this constable. And they said during the civil suit, they said when they brought the civil suit, we referred these charges to the district attorney. She referred it back to the constable for internal affairs investigation. Now, it's very obvious to me If something similar had been going on at Commissioner Ellis's office or Sylvester Turner's office or Lena Hidalgo's office or any of the judges that she's primaried's office, that she would have gone really hard in the paint, leaked all of the details, and released outrageous statements throughout the investigation if she had even a whiff of allegations that were similar to the ones that were headed toward that constable. But instead, she not only didn't investigate, she referred it back to the constable for internal affairs. There's another constable, another situation where she was in office, and this constable also agrees with her on misdemeanor cash bail reform and that he is opposed to it. They're on the same side of the issue. And he weaponized his office during the day. He used his office, I should say, exploited his office by sending officers out to ask for campaign donations and to hold signs on the clock. Totally illegal, completely illegal. People are very careful about this. If you ask any county public employee, they're very careful about their timesheets and when they're doing which activities and with which equipment, because it is a big no-no to do that. It was such a bad scandal, he lost his primary under shady circumstances. His campaign funds eventually disappeared and nobody knew where they were funneled or what happened. And no charges were ever brought. It was extremely public. The DA could have easily gone after the constable. The DA could have easily leaked all the details of the case. She could have taken it all in front of the grand jury. There were 3 people later that were fired who filed wrongful termination suits against this constable. It's extremely clear that there are people in Harris County who could have been prosecuted that she took a pass on, who are sitting public elected officials. And she went extremely hard after people who are political enemies on much smaller paper level trials, all the while complaining that she doesn't have the resources to go after violent crime and paying Republicans and former Republicans and people who are tight with Republicans to do her dirty work. Now,
In fact, she used a Republican law firm to go after recently whom?
Oh, not just a Republican law firm. Let me spell it out here. The general counsel, in other words, the top lawyer for the Texas Republican Party, received $175,000 in your hard-earned taxpayer Harris County dollars solely to investigate County Judge Lena Hidalgo, in spite of the fact that the DA has 8 public corruption officers on staff. She made sure to pay her friend 3 times the rate of any of these one public corruption officer she has on staff. And this friend was the head of the Texas Republican Party's general counsel. And to add another wrinkle to it, this Texas Republican Party general counsel member that she hired, her husband donated to Kim Ogg's campaign. Now, if that's not dirty, I don't know what is. And to see all of these, to see all of the media coverage of Lena Hidalgo, of Rodney Ellis, of Mayor Turner, the investigations of Daryl Jordan, the investigations of Franklin Bynum on character issues, and to see them skate on the fact that she has very clearly taken our hard-earned money and outsourced this job to someone who has every political interest in following through on it, is a shame. The media needs to do a little bit better. They need to make sure that they're covering this story. It needs to be in print.
Well, that is why we have independent media. And welcome aboard, Alistair Waters and Eric Hayes. That's why we have independent media. But let's go a little bit further. Yesterday, the DA appeared on Channel 11. And after she appeared on Channel 11, she sent out an email blast to everybody to say, check out this interview. Not one question on these particular issues that we are speaking about here, which are more important than absolutely anything they spoke about on the Channel 11 interview. On the Channel 30, was it? I think it was Channel...
Newsmakers, right? It was Cambrell Marshall.
Right,
yes.
Cambrell Marshall. Not one question.
No, he says at the end, we go back 24 years and it was the biggest puff piece I've ever seen. It was a shame. It wasn't independent at all. And all the lies that she peddled on misdemeanor cash bail reform, she peddled them on the air. It wasn't challenged. And it was a 10-minute interview. Let's see if Sean Tier is running against Kim Ogg. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting at this point. At some point, I'm sure
I've interviewed Sean Tier, and he will tell you the whole story as is. I mean, so he'll be here sometime next week.
Well, Canberra ought to give him 10 minutes is what I would think if you're fair, or at least somebody who's a critic of or an advocate or a nonprofit leader, somebody who's been critical of the district attorney, to get the other side of the story. 10 minutes of media time, earned media time, costs millions of dollars to attain. You usually pay a PR firm a lot of money to get that. He just gift wrapped it right over to her. It's
Well,
ridiculous.
and that's why the email went out immediately after the interview. It was packaged and ready to go. When we talk about the mainstream media often being, whether willful or not, complicit with the establishment, some establishment political actors, this is what we're talking about. All right, Daniel, you wanted to contrast how she handles no bills. No bills generally for police officers, no bills generally for Republicans, or one sentence statements. For the Rodney Ellis's, well, we don't need to have a no bill for Hidalgo because she wasn't, placed in front of the grand jury or anything like that. But she always tries to make a big issue out of it. And one of the things that you would notice with Kim Ogg is they're generally Democrats or minorities. It almost seems often that she's doing the job of what we see as representations of Republicans. When she went after a voter, she went after a voter that was, I think he was no billed after the secretary, or rather, after the state attorney general sent him to Montgomery County because he thought it was more favorable. He couldn't get a conviction in Montgomery County, and she brought it here in Harris
That's
County, really
that's
attempting to show her bona fides to the Republicans. Hey guys, I am going after black voters, man. Continue, please.
No, that's a great case to talk about for a moment. So Ogg defenders will say the law requires us to investigate voting irregularities. And that's actually true. But the law doesn't require you to take any evidence before a grand jury. You can just very easily show an investigation and throw it in the trash. And if anybody wants any information about that and say, well, but that's irregular, who would do that? Every other major Democratic district attorney and for any county in the state of Texas acts that way. Every single other one of them acts differently than Kim Ogg does. She is out on a limb on her own. And in fact, in the case of Mr. Rogers, Herbert Rogers, she did not inform him that she was presenting information in front of a grand jury one way or another, which is rude. And he found out later on that it had been presented, and thankfully no billed. So he didn't have to go in front of a grand jury or get indicted or catch that as a surprise. So yes, she does weaponize her office. She does use her office way beyond what the law requires when it benefits her. And she does seem to go after black people more than white people.
That is more, that act there, and believe it or not, with all the things that many have come up with, their a list of articles. The reason that one should hit home to a whole lot of Houstonians is using the other to prove your bona fides to the Republican Party. In other words, that fit classically with the voter issue, the false voter issue Republicans would like you to see now. Again, if the state attorney general, who is a criminal himself, couldn't get the job done in Montgomery County, why the hell would she pick it up in Harris County? Please tell me.
Because it plays well to her base, which is Republicans.
There you go.
We discovered throughout this process, and we haven't even gotten to what's been going on lately, right? But
right.
So let's talk about that for a moment. In late September, the weaponization, an article came out from the Houston Chronicle. Jen Rice, who's a fair reporter, who pointed out a lot of this stuff and just followed the paper trail and what had been happening and presented it, which of course angered the DA and angered all of her friends. At that point, that was a trigger for a resolution from the Harris County Democratic precinct chairs. I'm the author of that resolution, but I'll tell you this, it was not hard to gather signatures for it because everybody has seen what's been going on over the last 6 years when it comes to the district attorney, and everybody read the September article. And upon reading that article, then they knew exactly what we were talking about. And it's basically calling her out for two things. One is weaponizing her office. Two is being out of alignment with Democratic Party values. Now, since then, I just want to briefly say, That the Rachel Hooper story about her hiring the top Texas Republican general counsel lawyer broke later, as did the fact that she endorsed a Republican for the at-large 3 city council race, Twilight Carter. So whenever people say that we're being divisive by attacking a Democrat, just keep in mind that we're talking about a Democrat who endorses Republicans and pays taxpayer dollar to Republicans to investigate other Democrats. And that's why it's been such a grassroots uprising, because at every turn, she feeds into the fact that what we're saying is true. We're telling the truth. Everybody can see it. All of her behavior demonstrates it. And in each committee meeting, we see it over and over again. In the resolutions committee meeting, where we needed to make sure that this passed, the vote was pretty tight. It was 10-9, but the public comment was not tight. It was 27-12. And these are some of the most active political activists and organizers and volunteers and staunchest allies to the Democratic Party in all of Harris County who are weighing in.
What did she call you activists again? Or what did one of her reps?
Insiders.
Not her. Let's wait. Let's be accurate.
Yeah, sure.
Her proteges. What did her proteges call these folks?
Well, she said some bad stuff herself, right? But one of her precinct chairs called us elites, and then she called us insiders and partisan extremists. Meanwhile, she's got 4 people who are on payroll advocating for her on the call, people who worked at the district attorney's office. And then in the next meeting that this resolution was tested, the steering committee meeting, Senator Carol Alvarado shows up to defend her, whose sister Yolanda Alvarado is on that committee and allegedly works with the DA. So, if you want to talk about who's the real insider here, I mean, at every single turn, if I could use the cliche, every accusation is a confession with this district attorney. When she points her finger and says something, that means that she's doing it every single time. And these people are getting paid 6 figures during the day and then sometimes $500 a month during the evening to campaign for her. It's a racket. It's clear. It's disgusting. It's corrupt.
I want to make an offer here as well too, because we are two-sided here. We don't only set one side. So this platform is open for everybody on all sides to come. There's only one caveat. We only speak the truth on this channel. And we also probe on this channel. You're not going to get it. Folks don't get the kind of interview that we saw on Channel 11 where absolutely nothing of consequence was probed. That is why, and to the listeners out there, that is why we need independent media. Because again, when you have the media seemingly to be in bed with leading politicians, it doesn't serve the community well. When we speak about Rogers, the voter who Kim Ogg went ahead and took in front of the grand jury, that political gain that she probably did get from Republicans saying, this Democrat will go after Black people at the vote machine, which is probably good for us. That had a psychological effect, not only on Mr. Rogers, but it had a material effect on all people, all Black people or Latino people or people of color who had somehow a presence with the criminal justice system. Just to be sure, they're going to think twice before they vote. Don't sit back and think, well, Egberto, that's just one incident. That one incident, because it was publicized as it was, means that it likely affected the voting base of many Democrats, because they will say, I don't want to take the chance that this district attorney is going to indict me, so I'll just stay home. Wait a second, Daniel. So I want to tell you guys this. So anyone listening to my voice right now, to Daniel's voice right now, remember to tell all your brothers and sisters out there, do not be cowered by, or do not cower to what the establishment is doing to you. You go out there and vote. We will have your back. Everybody, you go out there and vote. There is a very active activist community out here that will have your vote. Continue, please, Daniel.
You're absolutely right. We're clearing 120 precinct chairs who've signed on the resolution. There have been several who have been signing on in the past few days. It's continuing to gain momentum, and at every single turn. And there are a lot of good people beyond the precinct chairs backing it up. I wanted to also tack on to this. The DA is the gatekeeper for the jails in Harris County. She says she doesn't oversee the jails and it's outside of her purview. That's untrue. If she weren't putting out BS reports on overcrowding for the jails, if she weren't making false claims to Canberra Marshall and Click to Houston about the overcrowding of the jails right now, then she could be able to slither away from that. But that's not true. There are very real world circumstances to this. Nia Hernandez, who spoke at the press conference before the CEC, her son is in the Harris County jail, and there's absolutely no reason for him to be there. There was a mental health event that was taking place. He was arrested during that mental health event. And now he's going to be facing, long pressure from the system, and then eventually a trial for that. She could just drop the charge, and he could return to his mother, and that way they could be a family again, and they could move on. Instead, they're doing this with our money in our name. They're incarcerating this young man, and there's a lot more where it came from. We've had, I believe, at this point, and don't quote me entirely on this, but you can look it up. I think it's 15 or 18 deaths in the Harris County jail for people who shouldn't have been there. There's one man who's in the Harris County jail right now with stage 4 kidney cancer over a BS charge. And the irony of it is it's related to a firearm that he legally owned. So it is unconscionable what the district attorney's office is doing. It is unconscionable that they are lying about it and spreading propaganda to try to slither away from their responsibility as related to this direct harm. And that's why it matters whether or not people vote. A lot of times, when we have the vote conversation, it's all about the presidential level. But what about your local district attorney? What about your judges? What about your state board of education member? What about your commissioners? These folks control people's lives. They control your local jails. They control whether or not people eventually are charged with felonies or misdemeanors, of which they are actually not guilty. They control whether or not you're judged by a jury of your peers or by a racist jury. So, this is real world harm that is going on. I'm so glad that you called for people to get involved. I'm so glad that you pointed out that we have a growing grassroots army that will have the back of anybody who faces these issues, because that's the whole point, is to make people's lives better and to achieve justice and equity in the system.
Now, let me just say that Daniel is with Indivisible Houston, which can be reached at indivisiblehouston.org. That is one of our centers of democracy. You also know that we have Neil Aquino, who's frequently on this program with the Houston Democracy Project as well. What we believe in is democracy for all, not democracy for the connected. Anyway, Daniel, anything to close this segment before I go ahead and tell folks to start calling in?
Make sure that you pay attention to the story of the admonishment of the district attorney, Kim Ogg. If you'd like to show up to the CEC, the County Executive Committee meeting, it's going to be at the UH Student Center on December 12th, I believe, at 5:30 or 6 is the starting time. It's an open meeting. You don't have to be a precinct chair to attend. And we're here to be have a transparent and open and fair debate. I want the people who are voting against us to make sure that their vote is counted on the floor of the CEC, because I want to win this fair and square, just as we did in the resolutions committee and just as we did in the steering committee. So keep an eye on it. You're going to see this story continue to move.
And the other thing that we want to always ensure, folks, is accountability. As a radio host, I want to be accountable. As a radio host, a media host, I want to be accountable. I want to make sure that whatever I bring on air is fact-based. If at any time somebody thinks or implies that there is something here that needs correction, Daniel will tell you, all would tell you, I am always willing to come on air and elsewhere in blogs and say, I've made a mistake. But the one thing that we don't do is put false information out there.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel. And number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.